A recent survey conducted by Ipsos on behalf of MNP highlights that in Saskatchewan, 6 in 10 people say they would need a significant pay raise to live debt-free. Many of those living with debt have accrued it through putting emergency expenses on things like credit cards. Pamela Meagher is with MNP and joins me now. Thank you so much for taking the time. Can we just start off by saying why do you think people are charging these expenses over and over again to credit cards?
I think a lot of it starts with when people are starting out in life right now, they already are starting with debt behind them already. So become very comfortable having debt when they start their careers. So coming out of university, there's student loan debt. So therefore they're like, okay, well, I already have this one payment. I could add one more and make it through. But they don't forget they have no ability to put a savings to create those emergency funds.
So it does tend to snowball a little bit. In terms of savings, how much do you think people should have just in case?
That number is very, very variant between every home. Every house has a different level of expense. So a family of 5 is going to have different levels and needs than a husband and a wife or just a single individual. A number I always tell people to shoot for is figure out what your actual needs are per month and times that by about 3. Because then you'll need, if you apply for EI, it takes some time for those benefits to get paid and out the door. Also, if you're applying for a new job, you could be in between paydays. So those will tend to help alleviate some of those mispays.
And savings, they can be hard for people to start building up. It takes a little while and it can be hard to even get started. So how do you think that cost of living and your wages really factor into that saving process?
Saving process is very difficult because it obviously is extremely measurable. You either have $1 in the bank or you don't. Can be a very discouraging process and will likely require you to feel like you're almost taking a step back in life because you worked really hard to get to that career, to get through that university, but now you have to minimize a little bit to be able to put those pennies aside to save for those rainy days, for those emergency funds, car funds. But as it may feel like a step back, it is a really huge step in the right direction, and I encourage people to not get discouraged and be patient. It does take time.
Some of the numbers in this survey seem shocking, with that 60% thinking they'd need a pay raise. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the survey? How much do people generally think they would need to accommodate that debt?
That survey indicated that out of that 60% of people felt they need a 38% pay increase to their household to live in that debt-free or to accomplish that goal.
That's drastic.
That is very significant. It's almost another salary into that home. So things people can do to start to mitigate that is really looking at, it kind of forces people into a vulnerable lending. So they look to those high interest loans to get to that next day. That becomes very stressful for people, and as interest rates rise, it really will eat up that little extra that they do have to put away, and they won't even be able to meet ends meet, and then that's when that vicious circle of debt will begin.
And it begins early for lots of people. Young people coming right out of university or college are starting to accrue debt. So what do you think it'll take to make living here a little more affordable?
That's a good question. Again, I think it really goes back to that budget, taking that step back, maybe using that used car for one more year, maybe renting, finding a smaller place to live, adding a roommate. It really, really comes down to really strong budgeting and, again, basic needs versus wants.
And lifestyle changes.
Absolutely, yes.
So if people are trying to make that change right now, you've mentioned a couple things they can do. What do you think the first step is, though, if someone's in debt and trying to find a way past it?
That's a really good point. The survey also indicated that of these 60% of people, 50% of people felt that they created this debt problem themselves. That creates a really big guilt and shame for them. So they feel like they have to solve this problem themselves. It can be very depressing at first to ask for help, but reaching out, asking for help is the very first step. It feels better. There's a lot of options out there for people, and debt relief is out there. You just have to ensure that you go to the right people and ask the right questions and get the right help.
All right, some good advice. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Pamela Meagher is a licensed insolvency trustee with senior manager with MNP.